Okay, welcome to part 3 of the Fractured Self Devlog series. This is a devlog to show the camera setup for the perspective shifting from first person to third person. So this is it at the moment. So what we have is our character, so it will just move. It's using the starter asset, so it's based on that. So I've swapped out the standard Unity character with my own character from Mixamo. And the movement's not wonderful. You can see here the left and the right. There's a lot of work to be done here, but this is just a test for the actual perspective shifting. So on the key press, I've just got the P key, and it should shift to first person. And another key press, it should shift back. Yeah, so back to first person. So the shifts aren't perfect, but the concept actually works. So what I'll do now is I'll take you through the actual concept of how we built this. Okay, I'm here on the hierarchy on the left, and you can see how I've selected the nested parent armature unpack, and that's the Unity starter assets setup. So what I've done, I've changed things slightly. I've got a main camera in here, and you can see here it's got the Cinemachine Brain icon. So I've got the Cinemachine Brain there. If I go to the inspector and I scroll down a bit, I will show you. So the Cinemachine Brain, you can see it here, and the blend, it's important here, is on the standard ease in, ease out. You've got a few different kind of setups. I'm just going to keep it with ease in, ease out right now. I've got a 2-second blend, so it should blend over 2 seconds between the first person camera and the third person camera. So what I've done here, I've got 2 camera setups, one third person, so a Cinemachine virtual camera set up as third person, and a Cinemachine virtual camera set up as first person. Let's go back to the third person virtual camera, and I've given it a priority of 10 because that's the one that's going to start first. And I've set up, if I go down to the body here, it's on third person follow. I haven't done much to play around with the actual offsets and arm length, but like I said, this is just a test to see if the concept works. And using the aim on the composer, you can see there in the game view. And if I click on the first person character, I'm here, the first person virtual character. You can see here in the Cinemachine virtual character, the priority is 0. And what I've done here, I've set a pivot for it to follow. So if I go into the player armature here, you can see I've got the player armature. We've got the player camera route, which is taken from the standard assets. I've got a first person pivot. So if I can kind of zoom in here in the scene view, you can see that's the view, that's the setup there. So that is here, you can see on the character, that is the first person pivot. So that is the view of the first person camera, what it will be looking at. So if I go back to the Cinemachine first person, and I have here priority at 0, following the pivot. At the moment, I haven't put in anything for look at, it just needs to follow the pivot. But like I said, I'll need to experiment and play around with these to see what works the best. And the body, here, if I scroll down to the body, I've got a hard lock to target there. So there's a few different kind of things you can choose, but I'm choosing hard lock to target. So that is how the camera is set up. And if I go into geometry, you can see here I've got geometry, and you would normally have the actual Unity starter assets basic character, but this is my character I've taken from Mixamo to use for the game. As you can see, it's the Vanguard character, and you can see it's got the mesh and the Mixamo rig hips, and you can see here the avatar. To make it work, you need to make sure you've got the right avatar. I've got the right avatar here. And if I go back to the player armature, you can see in the inspector, it's got the starter asset third person controller and the correct avatar here. So setting up the character is another thing in itself, but I've already done that. So this is basically my camera setup. Okay, the next step to getting this all to work is my camera rig manager. So I've created an empty game object, called it camera rig manager. You can see here there's quite a few different things attached to it. So the first thing I've done is create a visual scripting state machine. So, and this is going to have a couple of scripts related to it to control the actual cameras. So you can see here I've got the state graph. So if I go to camera rig manager here and go to full screen. So we just got to overview. So you've got all these here. So I've got a third person state. So this is the initial state. If I double click here, you can see on enter state, I'm going to get a component, and that's going to house the priority bridge script, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. Then it's going to invoke the method, and this is setting the camera to third person. And then there's a blend effect, and you may have seen earlier on, there's a kind of post-processing blend effect. So this is a component for the script for that. This is the node to invoke it, and this is the string for the method name. And if I come back to camera rig manager, you can see I've already made the variables here. So I've got my Cinemachine third person and my Cinemachine first person cameras, and you can see given the cam TP and cam FP variable names, and a cooldown float. So there's a bit of a space between the camera switching, and again here this does the same thing. And this last switch time, it stops the camera flickering backward and forward. Okay, so and there's a transition between the first and third person state machines. Yeah, so they can easily go back and forward. And the first person is exactly the same. If I go to overview, the first person is exactly the same setup as the first person, except you can see the string name here, it's for the first person. So let's come out of this. And you can see here, these are object variables, so they're public. So you can see here the setup in the actual inspector. So we've got a few scripts on the camera rig manager. You can see here we've got I'm in the inspector now. You can see here we've got the camera priority bridge script. So that's basically telling Unity when to switch to which camera. And you see we've got our public variables, active priority 10 and active priority 0. And the variables for our actual Cinemachine cameras here. And then we have this camera toggle send message script. So what this is doing, I'm using a key press just to test things out. So on the key press of P, it's going to switch cameras. So there's that script. And we've also got, as it switches, it's got a 2-second blend. You can see here, this is a camera blend post effect script. It's got a fading time of 0.2 seconds, fade out time 0.2 seconds, and the hold time for the whole actual transition 1.6 seconds. So in total 2 seconds. And I've created a global volume with a few post-processing effects to kind of try and give some kind of cinematic effect to the camera blend. So you can see here's a transition volume, and if I go back to the hierarchy and I click on, you see my game objects at the bottom here, and my global volume camera transition. I click on here and you can see I've got quite a few different post-processing effects. A bit of chromatic aberration here, some film grain, some slight color adjustments playing around the contrast and the saturation, motion blur, and to try and give you that kind of zoomed in camera feel, and also a lens distortion, and again to try and give it that zoomed in camera feel. So that's the actual post-processing effect on the blend. So if I go back to the camera rig manager, so we've got our post effect, and also what we've got a transition mesh hider, because what was originally happening when I was transitioning from first person to first person and vice versa, the camera was moving through the actual mesh of the actual playable character. So she wasn't really pretty, so the camera was just moving, and you could see the actual mesh, it was moving through it. So this script here hides the mesh, and you can see here I've got these public variables, so body head renderer and the visor renderer. So if I go back to my hierarchy and I select my Vanguard character here, you can see it has the mesh, and also there's a little visor. So if I click on here, you'll see right at the top here, this character, I'm just kind of zoomed in, let's move around a bit. It has two meshes. It has this little visor here at the front of the character, and then if I click on Vanguard mesh, it's got the mesh for the whole character. So what I want to happen, if I go back to my camera rig manager and I scroll down to the transition mesh hider, I want it to hide the mesh while it's transitioning. So there's a little delay, so I was trying to get a little ghosting feel so that maybe the mesh will blur, so to speak. And the hide duration is 2 seconds, the same as the transition blend. So let's now have a look at the actual scripts themselves. Okay, first of all, we've got our camera priority brief script. So you can see here we've got our public variables, and we've got our public integers for the active and inactive priorities, and here setting our third person. So if it equals active priority, so if TP equals active priority, let me switch here, and we've got the actual script stuff here for the setting the first person. So this is just fairly straightforward, setting the priority for third person, and then setting the priority for first person, so you can switch backward and forward. Well, I'll click on the send message. So I click on toggle send message. You can see here what I've done here. I've got my public key code, toggle key, and I'm using the key code P. And what I'm doing as well, as a quick aside, is Unity starter assets uses the new input system, but the key code uses the legacy system. So I've actually set this up in project settings to use both, so I can use key presses and the new input system. Okay, so we've got our key code set up here, and on start it's going to say we can set third person. It's going to play the transition effects and hide the transition, and that all happens on the key press. And then we've got our update method. Here it goes like if first person is not equal to this variable here, it's going to run this switch and also play the transition effects and also hide the mesh. So that's our toggle send message. I'll go to our camera blend post effects script here. Let's scroll up. We've got our fade time, so I can adjust these in the inspector if I want. So I've been playing around with them. I initially started off with this, and I had a few different kind of setups, but at the moment this is the one that's looking the best. So we've got a coroutine running here, and again we've got our our floats here. So we're gonna wait for the 2 seconds. And you can see that's running here. Okay, so that's our post blend, our camera blend post effects. And with this script, our mesh hider, that's pretty straightforward, using the same duration as the transition to hide the mesh. We've got our public variables, and again we've got another coroutine running here for our delay to wait for 2 seconds. Okay, so those are the scripts that are attached to the camera rig manager and being managed by the visual scripting state machine. I may probably down the track try and do all of this with visual scripting, but it was proving quite difficult to get it all to work. So there's a lot more work for me in that area as well. Okay, to wrap things up, we're in play mode, and our character's moving, and we're just going to hit the P key, and you can see the transition effects, And if you look on the right of the Cinemachine virtual camera, you should see the priority changing from 10 to 0 and backward and forward. And obviously you see the position of the camera and the rotation changing slightly. So that is the basic setup for our first person to third person camera shift perspective rig. So lots of finessing to be done with the camera and the movements. Like I said initially, you can see the mouse look isn't working great. The movement, if I go here, movement is not fine at all. Again, mouse look, not wonderful. So a lot of work needs to be done there, but the initial concept actually works. Okay, so that is our camera rig testing setup.